I didn't actually plan on filming a video today, but I set up this little space and like you can still see the cat tree, but like whatever, we're rolling with it. Here we go. I've just pulled a few books that I think are fairly underrated and we're going to talk about them and I'm going to recommend them to you, and let's get started. We're going to start off with one that probably more people know about and have read. Lately it's been on the read it before you see it shelf at the bookstore where I work, which has been very, very distracting because I would love for there to be a movie of this, but the movie, which finished filming in 2017, still doesn't have a release date and is apparently unreleasable, which, like, I need to know. I need to know why. So the book in question, or series rather, if you haven't already guessed, is Chaos Walking by Patrick Ness. This is the first book in the series, The Knife of Never Letting Go, and these are, oh man, oh so good. They're sci-fi books, and I don't read a lot of sci-fi, not on purpose, but I can't seem to not reach for a fantasy book ever. These books follow a boy named Todd. I believe he's supposed to be like 16. They say he's 15, but the planet he's on, the years are like 13 months, so he's like 16 or something. On the planet where he lives, there are only men from the colony of humans that have moved there because of a virus that wiped out all the women, and this virus also made all of the men able to hear all of each other's thoughts, including the thoughts of, he can hear his dog's thoughts. Todd ends up finding something that completely shakes up everything that he thought was true about this planet that they live on and the role that humans have played and what happened to the women and why things are the way that they are, and the trilogy follows him as he sets off to figure out the truth and to set right the wrongs that humanity has done to this new planet. And next up we have Septimus Heap by Angie Sage. These books are old favorites of mine. These were the first books that ever competed with my love for Harry Potter. I read them for the first time when I was quite young, and I've read them 2 or 3 times since. I've only read the last 2, I think, once. Rereading them as an adult, I did find them to be quite elementary, but they are middle grade books, so if you do read them, keep that in mind. That being said, though, these books, man, the universe that Sage created is one of the most unique and just fantastical, wonderful worlds that I've ever been in. The characters are so sweet and lovable, and there were many points I remember throughout the series when I would notice something and I would be like, that doesn't seem quite right. That feels like a lazy thing that she did. And then later I found out, no, wasn't lazy, was brilliant, was calculated, was incredible, and there are so many different aspects. Like, it's a little bit spooky sometimes, it's a little bit steampunk sometimes, it's a little bit post-apocalyptic. What's the actual premise of the book, you ask? Good question. In this world, it is understood that a 7th son is going to be a particularly powerful wizard, the 7th son of a 7th son even more so. Septimus is, of course, the 7th son of a 7th son. However, on the night of his birth, the midwife pronounces him dead. On that same night, his father finds a baby buried in the snow, a baby girl, and he takes her home. So while they lose their son that night, they have a daughter, and they raise her as their own, and they never tell her that she's adopted. And then on her 10th or 11th birthday, the extraordinary wizard, who's like the wizard in charge, kind of, comes to their home and tells them, the baby that you brought home, she's actually the princess and she's in danger and you need to take her away. How do we even premise? Through the first book, we essentially find out like the state of the world at this point, where magic users are really looked down upon, and we find out more about what really happened to Septimus on the night that he was born. So it's a 7-book series, so if you want something that you can sink into and spend some time on, it's really good. But again, it is middle grade, so I know it's not going to appeal to everyone, but with the nostalgia I have attached to them, I couldn't love them more. But this was one that even when I was reading them when I was a kid, I didn't know anybody else who had read them, and I still don't. Like, I don't know anyone else who read these, like, as a kid, except for, like, the one friend that I had that I told to read them. Next up, Unlondon by China Mieville. At least I think you pronounce it Unlondon. I assume it's Unlondon. But essentially, Unlondon is this like upside down parallel universe London where everything is just insane. And I know that there's some really clever things that he does with the chosen one trope in this book, but what I really remember about it is just how crazy London is and the creative ways that we get taken into that world. Everything in London is kind of gross and terrible, but it's also fantastically beautiful in the most bizarre, creative way. Regardless of the fact that I don't remember a lot about it because it's been so many years since I read it, I still would say read it, and when I reread it, I will probably have a more comprehensive review to share with you. And following up, we have a couple classics. First, I want to talk about Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. It's an Austen book, so I don't know how underappreciated it can really be. All the same, of Jane Austen's books, I feel like this is the one that is the most underappreciated. It's probably not her least popular. That's probably Persuasion, maybe. But still, this one doesn't get enough love. Northanger Abbey is funny, it is very light, it doesn't take itself very seriously. Our heroine in this book is a young woman named Catherine who reads far too many Gothic novels to the point where she starts to think that she is in one, and when a friend of hers invites her to stay at her home, which is an abbey, so it's somewhere that nuns used to live and now the family lives there, she starts making up all of these essentially conspiracy theories in her head. And she is ridiculous, she is kind of stupid, but she's very lovable, and her love interest is an absolute joy. The love interest in this one is a lovely, lovely man. So if you like Austen and you haven't tried this one yet, 10 out of 10 recommend. Though I think I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads just for, you know, to be honest. Next up, we have The Coquette by Hannah W. Foster. This is a short one, and it's a very, 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 very sad one. This is a dramatization of the true story of Elizabeth Whitman, who was a poet in Hartford, Connecticut, and whoa! And it's really just about her trying to be a human in a time when women were not treated as such and were not allowed to be such. And it's tragic, and it's eye-opening. Ooh, okay, I can't get into this one. This one will make me emotional. This is an epistolary, so it's written as a series of letters between the characters. I know that might put some people off, but I would still say give it a shot because it's so good. And if you want to have a good cry and maybe rage about the patriarchy, this is the one. So those are all the actual physical books I have, but I have a couple more that I do not own that I still want to talk about. The first of those is Spinning Silver, which I do have a copy of, but I have lent it out to a friend at the moment because I love it so much and I want to share that with other people. Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik is about a girl named Miriam who is the daughter of a Jewish moneylender. When her mother falls ill, she ends up taking over the family business because her father's not very good at it, but she turns out to be very, very good at it, and it draws the attention of a local fairy king. I have a full review of it on my website and on my Goodreads, so if you're interested in my full thoughts, you can go there, but I will just say, for the sake of this video, that it is about 3 incredible young women who just take control of their lives in a world that does not want women to have control of their lives. And they are all so different, and they come from very different walks of life, and yet the level of kinship and sisterhood that they develop is so beautiful. And the world building I also found to be really incredible. It's very atmospheric. It's this kind of bleak winter wonderland, like just, it's stunning. The Boy with the Cuckoo Clock Heart by Matthias Malzieu, which I definitely pronounced wrong. Oh boy, okay. I came to this book because I found the movie, which I believe is on Netflix. It's animated, it's a French movie, it's a French book, but it's translated into English, and the movie also has an English translation, which is very, very good. I mean, I don't speak French, so I don't know how good the translation is, but it's a good movie in English, is my point. It's very bizarre. It's the most bizarre book I've ever read. I also have a full review of this one on my website if you're interested. It was so strange that it took me like 2 months after I finished it to be able to write a review because I just had so much to process and so many feelings and so much confusion. The world of it, it's this like, it's like a complete freak show. All of the characters are terrible. None of them have healthy views of love or boundaries or anything, and yet there's something really honest about it. But anyway, This book follows a boy named Jack who is born on the coldest day on Earth. So cold, in fact, that his heart freezes in his chest, and the midwife who delivers him has to replace his heart with a cuckoo clock. His mother dies or leaves him. One way or another, the midwife ends up being the one who raises him. And this heart that she's given him is so fragile and so volatile that he has to be very, very careful with it. And the midwife gives him 3 rules that he always must follow to make sure that his heart works properly and that he doesn't, like, die. And these rules are: never touch the hands of your clock, keep your temper under control, and most importantly, never, ever fall in love. Of course, Jack ends up falling in love, and the book follows him on his adventures to find his lady love and win her over, and he meets a really bizarre, crazy cast of characters along the way. They are all at once lovable and completely hateable, and I don't even know. I was weeping in an airport when I finished listening to the audiobook of this, and I don't even know what to say. Like, read it, watch the movie. The soundtrack is incredible, so seriously, please do it. The next one is gonna be very well known and very well appreciated with a certain set of people, and then probably completely unheard of to another set of people. But because I have this on my arm in full display in this video, I couldn't not talk about Howl's Moving Castle by Dianna Wynne Jones. And again, for fans of Ghibli, you probably know this book exists, you've probably read it. It is so good. So even if you're not a fan of Ghibli movies, which, like, I don't, who are you, why, but regardless, the book is so good. I don't know if it's technically classed as middle grade. I know I've seen it in bookstores shelved in middle grade, but it doesn't read like middle grade, at least I didn't think so. But it's about a girl named Sophie, and she's the oldest daughter, so she feels that it's fallen to her to have the boring life because she's going to take over the hat shop after her parents die, and she just has accepted that that's her lot in life. However, looming over the village where she lives is this roaming castle where the wizard Howl lives, and everybody knows that Howl steals beautiful girls' hearts. She feels that she's in no danger at all because she is very plain, so obviously Howl would never steal her heart. One night, the Witch of the Waste comes to Sophie's hat shop, and Sophie inadvertently, she doesn't know it's the Witch of the Waste, and she insults her, and so the Witch of the Waste turns her into an old, old woman. Sophie then takes it upon herself to try to break this curse, and she ends up in Howl's Moving Castle. This is another one where the world is just so bizarre and lovely. The characters are so lovable and sweet. It's very wholesome, but it's not, like, sickly sweet, and even if you've watched the movie, the book is very, very different. The characters are quite different in it. It still follows the same basic plot line, but there's a lot more going on, so I really recommend it to anyone. Next up, we've got Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. Now, if you watched my Lord of the Rings video, you will know that I do not like Narnia. There are a lot of things that I like about it, and I feel very nostalgic about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I think that that's like a sweet little story, but overall, I'm not into it. However, Till We Have Faces, which is one I hadn't even heard of until I don't even know how I found it, honestly. The book is sort of a reworking of the classical myth of Cupid and Psyche, and it follows these 2 sisters, and one of them is very ugly and one of them is very beautiful, and we follow it from the ugly sister's point of view and the love that she has for her sister and the responsibilities that she has to take on, the decisions that she has to make, the way that she's treated by the people around her, the way that her sister is treated by the people around her. It's all just a lot. I got very emotional reading this book. I don't really know how to describe it in terms of atmosphere. It's a lovely atmosphere. It's this kind of barbaric landscape that at the same time has this very rich, almost primal kind of fantasticalness to it. That's a good word, fantasticalness. I have an English degree. If you are a fan of Lewis, I absolutely think you should check it out, but even if you're not, like I am typically not, I still think that this one is worth giving a try because it's so different from what people usually read from him. Next up, and I'm going to be quick with this one, is The Bloody Chamber and Other Stories by Angela Carter. This is a series of short stories. They are all fairy tale retellings. They are dark, they are sensual, they are sexy in like a kind of creepy way. They're super creative, they're very atmospheric, which is just my jam. And this one I listened to the audiobook for, and there are two narrators, but one of them is Richard Armitage, and he was amazing. And the woman was amazing too, but Richard Armitage has a lovely voice. And finally, our last one is Rosehead by Ksenia Anske, which I also probably pronounced really, really wrong. This is YA, I think, fantasy? I don't know, honestly. And it follows a young girl named Lilith Bloom who goes to stay on a family estate. It's this beautiful manor house surrounded by this giant rose garden, and she soon finds out that there is more to the rose garden than meets the eye. It is another quite bizarre, fun and yet dark fantasy story with a really lush, beautiful landscape. I could see this one not being for everyone. It is quite slow, and it's very, very atmosphere based. For how creepy and dark everything is, not that much super happens. At least as far as I remember. This is another one, it's been a little while. So that's it. There's my list of underrated books. Are they all fantasy? No, the Coquette's not. Northanger Abbey's not. There's 2 out of however many. So let me know down below if you have read any of these, if you've loved any of these, or if there are any that you now want to read. And I'll have all of these listed below, mostly so that all those authors whose names I butchered you can have the correct spellings for. And I'll also have links to the reviews I did for The Boy with the Cuckoo Clock Heart and Spinning Silver. So like and subscribe, I guess.